Hey everyone,
Hey everybody.
welcome to another Travel Therapy Mentor video. It's been quite a while since we last made a video, 6 weeks. I think that's the longest we've gone without making a video for like 5 years now, or 4 years. So kind of crazy, but a lot has happened in the last 6 weeks, so we wanted to get on here and update you guys. We were not planning on taking that long between videos, but we've been pretty busy. We're going to talk about what's been going on. Whitney's going to introduce us, and I'm going to get this video shared in our group.
Well, hey everyone. So, in case you didn't know, we got married. So, this is our first time introducing ourselves as Whitney and Jared Kazaza, formerly Whitney Aiken and Jared Kazaza. Although I actually haven't officially changed my name yet, so that still feels a little bit weird, and I haven't quite gotten used to that yet. But as soon as we get back from Europe and we're home a little bit more this fall and winter, I'll go through the process of actually changing my name. But yeah, our intros are going to sound a little bit different from now on. For those of you guys that are familiar with us already, if it is your first time watching one of our videos, we've been traveling physical therapists for about 8 years now, and we don't work full-time anymore as travel PTs. Starting in 2018, after we had been travel PTs for about 3 years, we started taking more time off, 6 to 9 months between contracts, and we had reached financial independence at that point. Had saved up a lot of money in our first 3 years of traveling. We also started our online business, Travel Therapy Mentor, where we now mentor and educate other traveling therapists regarding how they can get started and all that. So we have been together. Just a little bit of more background about us. We started dating in 2013 when we were both in physical therapy school, and then we started right away traveling in 2015 when we were new grads. So we've been together for 10 years now, and traveling all over the world together. Before we left on this trip, we'd been to 42 countries, all 50 states, and we've been to almost all the national parks. So finally, we were like, it's probably about time to get married. I'd been bugging Jared for years about getting married, and we just never really slowed down enough to take the time to plan it and do it. But we definitely are moving into the next phase of life where we're considering starting a family. So we wanted to go ahead and get married and then start to move into that process. So Jared actually proposed last year in 2022 when we were on our road trip to our assignment in Alaska. And a little bit around that time, it was right before our 9-year anniversary. He proposed in May, and our 9-year anniversary of dating was coming up in June. And so I got the bright idea, like, why don't we get married on our 10-year anniversary? So that kind of kicked off the planning of planning it for June the 9th, 2023 to have it on our 10-year anniversary.
Yeah, it had been a long time coming, but it's really hard to plan something like that and do everything necessary when you're traveling all the time. Like, basically, we have traveled nonstop for 8 years, except for during COVID, which also was not a good time. So but yeah, I think now was the time. We were definitely slowing down a little bit. We haven't been traveling as much as we used to, even though it kind of, to anyone else, it seems like we travel all the time. But compared to like 2018, 2019, where we were just going all the time, it hasn't been as much.
Yeah, so for those of you that might be interested, I'll tell you just a little bit about our wedding, what we decided to do, how everything went, and then we'll get into telling you more about our honeymoon, which we're on right now. We're currently in Europe. So as far as our wedding goes, we had been talking about it for years, what we might do. Jared really didn't want to do like a very big wedding, and I was pretty much on board with that too. We've just heard horror stories from people where planning a huge wedding was just really overwhelming, really stressful. You barely get time to even talk to people. So we had decided a long time ago that we were not going to have a big wedding.
Yeah, and anyone that's followed us for any length of time knows that costs are always a concern as well. So having like a $20,000, $25,000 wedding was just definitely not something that really went along with our lifestyle.
Yeah, we'd much rather take that money and spend it on traveling the world, like going on a 10-week honeymoon. We can do a lot more things with $20,000 than just have one day of a party. So we knew a long time ago that we were going to have a small wedding. We had even talked about maybe eloping, just doing something just the two of us, and then coming back and having a reception, because we definitely wanted to celebrate in some way with our close family and friends and have like a small reception. So we ultimately decided, after going back and forth with it for a while, just to do it in our hometown in Roanoke, Virginia, which surprised a lot of people because a lot of people thought like, oh, you're the traveling people, right? Like you'll do a destination wedding. But again, like we travel so much for work and for fun, and it's a lot to plan. And so the thought of trying to plan a destination wedding and figure out all the logistics in a foreign country or somewhere away from home just seemed like a lot, and I really didn't want to take that on. And I say because some people are like, oh, is Jared helping you? I'm like, it's really more of like a me thing, and I'm sure most women understand that is like it's more of the woman that's gonna plan the wedding in most situations. So it was very much me going out and planning it. So ultimately, I was like, you know what? Let's just do something simple, something low key. We'll do it in our hometown. We actually really thought about just doing the elopement together in our hometown. Where we're from is in the Blue Ridge Mountains, which is part of the Appalachian Mountains. We have something called the Blue Ridge Parkway that goes through our area, and I thought, wow, that would be so fun. Just the two of us will just go up on the mountain, have an officiant, and just do a little ceremony, something very simple, and then we'll come back and have the party that night. But then our parents, our moms especially, were kind of like, oh, we'd really, we would appreciate being there. So we were like, you know what, why don't we just kind of do that same sort of thing, but we'll just do it with our immediate family only. So we decided to have a small ceremony on the Blue Ridge Parkway with just our parents and our siblings there. So we had I think a total of 9 people, and then we had the officiant, the photographer, and the videographer there.
Yeah, Whitney wanted to have a bigger wedding than I did for sure. I wanted to be pretty much as small as possible. I don't like being the center of attention. I don't like really much to do with weddings, but I think we had a pretty good compromise, and I think the most stressful part of a wedding from all the ones that I've been to is the ceremony itself. It's like everyone's watching you. It's kind of nerve-wracking, I would say. You feel nervous and everything, and I didn't really want that. And so I think having a small ceremony and then having a reception afterwards was ideal for us. I think it worked out really well. It meant less planning. It meant way less just attention and focus on us, which we wanted mostly to just have a private thing and then have more of a party with friends. And we didn't want it to be just all focused on us. And I get nervous in those situations, so it's better to avoid that.
Yeah, I think it went really well. I mean, it was definitely a really good compromise for me. I didn't care about having a big ceremony, and again, the planning, it just made it so much simpler. We didn't have to have an actual venue. It was just on the parkway at a nice overlook. My sister actually had a friend who had gotten married at this particular overlook, and I had gone to check it out. It was about an hour drive up the parkway from where we live, and it was really amazing because it kind of has this stone, almost like an altar, like a platform to stand on. So it looks like it's made to get married there, and it was gorgeous. So it went really well. So we had planned that all out, really simple. Didn't have to we did have to get a permit because it's part of the National Park Service. But again, we didn't have to have chairs, music, flowers, none of these things that you have at a regular ceremony. So it was really laid back and really simple.
Yeah, we had to get a permit for that, but that was really the only complication, and everything went very smoothly. We had perfect weather. Really couldn't have gone much better. The pictures turned out great.
Yeah, it was awesome, and that was a big part for me too. Just having some cool pictures. We've gotten a sneak preview of the pictures back. Got a couple pretty ones. We haven't gotten all the pictures or the video back yet, so excited to see more of that. We were really lucky. It was June, and there could have been rain. There was no rain. The only thing is, during that time, there were those wildfires in Canada,
which I think still might be going on. We just haven't been back on the East Coast for a while.
Yeah, we haven't been paying attention. If anybody knows, if you're watching and you want to comment and let us know about that, we're not really too aware of that. But at the time, the week leading up to the wedding, it was really bad. Not like New York bad, but it was just kind of hazy, and you really couldn't see the mountains that well. And I was bummed out about that, but I was like, you know what? There's only so much you can control. But the day of the wedding, it had cleared up some, so you could definitely still see the mountains. It was still pretty. It just wasn't quite as clear as usual. But other than that, everything went great. Really quick, easy. We had one of my best friends do the ceremony for us. We're not really religious, so we didn't want to have a minister or anything like that. So we just did a civil ceremony. Had our parents there and everything. It was really great. Had a little photo shoot up there, and then and a couple hours later we went back into town and we had the reception there.
And the reception, it was more planning than I thought it would be. I thought it would be pretty simple, but we did, it definitely wasn't like a normal wedding. We we were able to keep the guest list small enough. It was just like a few friends from college, a few friends from high school, a few friends from grad school, a few mutual friends that we've met traveling. And we were able to keep it, and family, and we were able to keep it small enough that we could have it at a restaurant instead of having like a big venue. So we rented out like a room, almost like a banquet room in a restaurant that didn't charge anything for the venue as long as we had like a certain amount of food and drinks. So that was perfect for us. That's exactly what we wanted. The food turned out really good. The drinks were fine. Everything was good with it.
Yeah, it was really nice. It was a restaurant that isn't just in our downtown, our hometown. We had about 50 people there. I think actually maybe more like 45. And to be honest, like that was even a little bit overwhelming. Just in 4 hours trying to talk to all 45 people. I don't know how people do it with a wedding of 200 plus. Like obviously we have other family members that we weren't able to invite, other friends that we weren't able to invite. There's tons of people that we know that we could have invited that we didn't. And you know, if you're somebody who's watching and you were not invited, you know, our apologies. Obviously you can't invite everyone. But we only invited just a very small number of people, and even that was like, it was hectic. Like it goes by so quick, you barely get to talk to everybody.
Yeah, and I realize now what everyone was talking about. Like people were giving us advice, friends of ours that have gotten married, and a lot of them had bigger weddings, like 150 people and things like that, and they're like, you know, you can't even talk to everybody, or maybe you talk to each person for 30 seconds. And so I felt like that even with just the number of people we had. I felt like I couldn't really talk to everybody, and there was more people I wanted to talk to, and then suddenly people are leaving, and I just don't know how if we had a bigger wedding, it would have been too hectic.
Yeah, but it was super fun. I had a great time. I was trying to get the dance floor started the whole night, but then it was like a balance between like wanting to dance and like wanting to talk to everybody. We got to see some friends and family that we haven't seen in a long time that traveled from out of state to see us, so that was really awesome. The food, the cake, everything was delicious. Everything went really well. We had a lot of fun. We had a little reception there at a restaurant, and then afterwards we did a little like after party. So quick backstory, when we basically first met, it wasn't the first time we'd actually met. We met actually in high school for the first time, just briefly through mutual friends. But the first time that we reconnected and started dating in 2013, we had gone to this country bar in our hometown. It's called Sidewinders. And I was like, oh, it'd be perfect. Like, it would be fun to go out after the reception and like go and dance and go to a bar with our friends. So I was like, let's go to Sidewinders. It'll be like our 10-year anniversary. And so we went to Sidewinders, and they made this big fuss of it. Like, we told them when we went in, so they waived our cover, and we talked to the owner, and he bought us a drink, and they like put our picture on their Facebook page. So that was really fun. So I enjoyed especially going with some of our close friends and dancing at Sidewinders after.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. That was definitely one of the highlights.
Yeah, and then the next day we wanted to have a little bit more time with some of our friends that came from out of state. So we had just a small brunch with some of our friends downtown. So that was really nice to just get some more time to talk to some of them. Some of them you hadn't seen since probably grad school,
yeah.
And other ones it had been like a couple years since we'd seen them. So
yeah.
That was really nice.
Yeah, I don't think things could have gone much better. I think it was just about perfect. We kept our costs very reasonable. Having the small ceremony was perfect. I really don't think much could have gone better than it did.
Yeah, so we're really happy with how it turned out, and I don't know, it's just like they say, it just goes by so quick. And you spend, I started like 9 months in advance planning for it, and then suddenly just one day and it's gone. But it was super fun, and I'm glad we did it. And so we're married now and finally tied the knot. It's exciting. So we left almost immediately after the wedding for our honeymoon. So that was another thing that was a little bit stressful leading up to it, because we were starting to plan the honeymoon while also wrapping up all the details and planning the wedding. We left 3 days later, so it was a little bit stressful.
And honestly, planning the honeymoon leading up to the wedding was probably more stressful than planning the end of the wedding, because we had a lot that we needed to plan, at least to like get the first half of the trip booked. So it was like a last minute thing. We had our flight booked there, but we didn't really know what we were doing, and we were a little stressed about that. But that worked out pretty well. So it's been exactly a month since the wedding. It's been almost 4 weeks tomorrow since we left for Europe. So we've been in Europe for basically the last month. And this trip has been really awesome so far.
Yeah. Just real quick, if any of you guys are watching live, if you just want to comment and say hi, or if you're watching later on the replay, comment and say hi. If you're excited for us, you can give us a thumbs up. I know this topic is a little more personal and not exactly what everybody tunes in for, but I figured there was enough of you out there that probably were like, what kind of wedding did you have? What did you do? We'll be posting more pictures and stuff from the wedding once we get everything back from the photographer, and then also once we get back from Europe. But
yeah, we got a lot of questions on Instagram, both about the wedding and then also obviously about the honeymoon. Switzerland was a lot of great pictures, and we got a lot of questions about that. So yeah, we wanted to just talk a little bit about everything we've done since then.
Yeah. So a little overview about our honeymoon. So we had gone back and forth about what we were going to do, and ultimately we decided that we wanted to see some places in Europe that we haven't seen before. Particularly, we really wanted to go to Switzerland and the Nordic countries, otherwise known, some people call them the Scandinavian countries, Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Finland. So when we started kind of putting it together, we like trips that are around like 8 to 10 weeks. They tend to do well for us. In the past, we have done trips that were as long as 5 months. We did another one that was 4 months, and we found that that was a little bit too long.
Yeah, it's too long. We've done trips as long as 5 months, as short as, besides just like a 1 week trip or whatever, 8 weeks. And 8 weeks was actually a little bit too short. I think 4 months was too long, and I think like somewhere between 10, maybe 11 weeks, I think that's about right for us. A lot of people, I think most people never travel for that long, and what you don't realize if you don't travel for that long is that like excitement and adrenaline and newness of traveling wears off after 2 months, 2.5 months, and then it's still fun. It's still a great experience. You're still seeing a lot of new stuff, but it's not the same as the beginning of the trip. And that's what we found on our 4 and 5 month trips is by the end of it, we were just kind of, it's like, okay, another museum, another city, and you don't appreciate it as much. So it's better to have these like shorter, 2.5 month trips than to have a really long trip, because the second half you just don't appreciate as much.
Yeah. So our first stop we planned was Switzerland. We found for many of you guys, you may know that we use points. We use airline points that we get from credit card rewards in order to get a lot of free flights. And so our main objective, especially when we're flying internationally, is to see if we can use our points to get a free flight. So we were looking at different options. We pretty much would have flown anywhere into Europe if it had worked out well. Because quite often you can fly, like say you fly into London or you fly into Amsterdam or something like that. Well, then from there you can get elsewhere in Europe for really cheap. They have really cheap flights over here, often trains or buses as well.
Yeah, and this was the hardest it's ever been to find good award flights. It usually is not a big deal. I can find them from our home airport to somewhere in Europe, like a lot of times exactly where we want to go, or at least in the same country. This time was very difficult. I spent, I would say, probably 8 or 10 hours searching for flights to try to make it work. And eventually it worked out, and we got a very good point redemption, but it was just the hardest it's ever been. And I think that's because Europe is extremely busy this summer. There's a lot of people here.
We heard, or we have heard, that this is one of the busiest summers traveling, especially because after COVID. So it could be one of the busiest travel summers ever, really. Because, with each passing year, more and more people move into the middle class in the U.S. and other countries and have the ability to travel. And especially after COVID, a lot of people, have all this pent up, want to travel. And so they say that this is going to be one of the busiest summers, or is one of the busiest summers. And we have more to tell you about that as we continue in our story. But with that said, we did notice it was harder to get a point redemption. But we were able to get a flight into Geneva, Switzerland. And Switzerland is where we wanted to start. Geneva wasn't necessarily the top of our list of where in Switzerland to go, but it was fine.
Yeah, the ideal would have been to fly into Zurich and fly out of Norway, and that was not working. So we ended up flying into Geneva, which otherwise we probably would not have even gone to Geneva. It would have been mostly Zurich in the middle of the country and not really gone further east. But it actually worked out really well. Geneva, that area was very nice, and we were able to plan a lot more stops than we probably would have done otherwise. And then our flight out, we planned out of
Sweden,
Oslo, Stockholm. So not ideal, but again, very close. So it worked out pretty well.
Yeah, so when we had left for the trip, we had our beginning flight into Switzerland, and our ending flight 10 weeks later, we already have out of Sweden. And then we had booked the first 2 to 3 weeks of the trip when we left. I think maybe actually the first 4 weeks. So, what we decided to do about Switzerland, I won't go into a lot of detail, but I'll tell you a little bit. So,
She just finished like a 5,500 word article about everything we did in
people
Switzerland.
had so many questions. We got more questions about Switzerland than anywhere we've ever traveled. And if you're watching this video, whether you're watching on the replay or live, let us know if you're one of those people who's really dying to hear about Switzerland, because I mean, dozens of people were like, can you send me your exact itinerary? So we actually decided to write specific articles just about Switzerland, not about, I mean, we're going to do one about the whole trip, but I ended up writing this like over 5,000 word article that I'm going to share probably tomorrow or the next day about Switzerland.
And I wrote one about costs, which I always do. If you don't know anything about word count, 5,000 words is like basically a quarter of a book probably. So she wrote a really long article.
It's a long one, but it's detailed for those of you that really want to know like what we did and a way that you could do it. We did find a way to like save costs a little bit, but it's going to be expensive. It's a very expensive place. It really helped that we got the point redemption for the flights. It helped that we stayed in Airbnbs and not hotels. It helped that we didn't eat out much. We mostly ate from grocery stores. They had a lot of like really good just to-go meals and like prepared foods, so we didn't even have to cook that much. We would just get like prepared salads, prepared sandwiches, prepared microwave kind of meals. So we actually, did it pretty much on a budget, but like the transportation and everything is just super expensive.
Yeah, we did. I mean, we definitely didn't cut costs as much as we could have. We definitely spend more now than we have in the past. But this is definitely the most expensive country we've ever been to. Even trying to do it relatively budget friendly, it was very expensive.
Yeah, so what we basically did is we were looking at doing like a train trip through the country. We had heard that you can take the trains all through the country and that's really like a scenic journey in itself, and we thought that would be amazing. We had actually originally looked at some trips where you can book it online and they basically book everything for you. You just tell them how many days and where you want to go, and they'll book your train and your hotels and give you a list of suggested activities. But you were going to pay a premium for that because they were booking it for you. And we basically figured like we can just do that ourselves. So we looked into this train pass they have. It's called the Swiss Travel Pass. And that was a huge lifesaver for us. So we weren't set on exactly how long we were going to go. We were like maybe a week, maybe 10 days. But for the Swiss Travel Pass, they have like 4 days, 5 days, 6 days, 8 days, or 15 days. And the cost difference between the 8-day and the 15-day was only like $40.
Yeah, and the pass itself, the 15-day pass, is like $550. So an extra $50 to stay there.
It was like $480.
Euros, right? And
I think,
then dollars.
I don't know. It was less than $500.
Okay, yeah.
Which sounds like a lot, but it covers all of your transportation anywhere in the country pretty much. Trains between cities, buses, trams, cable cars within the cities, even some like ferry rides and boat rides across the lakes. So I was like, you know what, let's just go for it and do like 2 weeks in Switzerland. There's enough to see you could spend months in Switzerland and not see everything. So we basically planned like 2 weeks, ended up being like 2.5 weeks. And I followed this one blog post that I found that kind of took you just like through the country from the south toward the north, like right through the middle. Obviously we didn't see the whole country, but we stayed in like 6 different cities, I think.
Something like that.
We went to Geneva, Lausanne, Zermatt, Lucerne, and Zurich. So we stayed in 5 cities, but we did day trips all over the country. We went to Bern on a day trip. We even went to the country of Liechtenstein on a day trip. We went all over like the Lauterbrunnen Valley on day trips. We did a Montreux day trip. So we went to probably more than a dozen like cities and towns in the country.
Yeah, and Switzerland was really amazing. Any of you guys that have read like about our travels in the past, we really loved Alaska. We really loved New Zealand. But Switzerland might be at the top of the list in terms of beauty. Some of the views we saw, like hikes there, we just haven't ever seen before. And like obviously Alaska as a state compared to Switzerland as a country, Alaska is way bigger. There's more to do there. There's more to see. But like the condensed beauty of Switzerland is really hard to beat, especially the Lauterbrunnen Valley region. It was amazing. And the only downside really of the country, I would say, is the cost. It's just extremely expensive. So for a lot of people on a budget or students, it's just not really realistic to go there for 2 weeks.
I think if it was a little bit cheaper to travel there, we would have no hesitation to say that it was our favorite place ever that we've ever been. But I think because the costs were higher, we didn't do some stuff as much, like we didn't eat out, and we like didn't live it up maybe as much as we would have in another country that was a little bit cheaper. But in terms of beauty, natural beauty, if you like mountains, the Swiss Alps were just insane. And we love to hike and just see really cool views. We saw glaciers and just these insane mountains that you've never seen before, waterfalls, lakes. So just in terms of the activities and the beauty there, obviously, of course, it's very clean too. The people are very nice. The transportation system is
very efficient,
amazing. So there were just a lot of pros to Switzerland. We had the best time. We loved it there. I sort of like, we go all these places, like when we went to New Zealand on our last trip, we're like, we're moving to New Zealand. And we're there and we're kind of like, we're moving to Switzerland, even though like it's not really realistic to move to Switzerland.
Yeah, it's more of just like a dream, I guess. But yeah, I mean, living in Switzerland would be really cool.
Yeah. Again, obviously this was summer too. We don't know what the winter would be like. We're not really winter people, but the mountains were insane. So if you're interested in learning more about our Switzerland trip, stay tuned for that article that I'll publish that details everything we did and some logistics and all that. But one thing I do want to say is our very favorite part of the area, the country that we went to was the Lauterbrunnen Valley. Specifically, we stayed in a town called Mürren. And if you get a chance to go to Switzerland, I would highly recommend that you stay in Mürren. It would be okay. You would still have a great time if you stayed in Lauterbrunnen, or if you stayed in Wingen, or Grindelwald, or
Gimmelwald,
or Interlaken. All those places are beautiful as well, but the place that we stayed in Mürren was just
awesome.
Unbelievable. It was amazing. It was like the most breathtaking thing we've ever seen, just right out our window. We basically read on the website that Disney based the Magic Kingdom off this place, and that, is it Tolkien that does the Lord of the Rings?
J.R. Tolkien, yeah.
Yeah. The Lord of the Rings guy based the Elven Kingdom, if you've ever seen that on Lord of the Rings, off of this. And I was like, yes, like this looks like the Elven Kingdom. It's like unreal mountains with thousands of waterfalls just coming down the mountain. It was crazy beautiful.
Yeah, Switzerland was awesome. The hiking there was amazing. We hiked more than we've ever hiked in our lives. I think we had 4 back-to-back like long hikes that we did, and it was tough. It was it's some of the elevation gain and the altitude there was it was hard. It was some of the hardest hikes we've done, but man, they were also some of the best hikes we've done.
Yeah. So if you like to hike, make sure to train before you go. Do a lot of elevation, a lot of incline walking, a lot of hiking where you're at before you go. But I also will say, if you're not somebody who's like really athletic or doesn't like to hike that much, the cool thing about Switzerland is their transportation system is amazing. They have cable cars and funiculars and trains that take you to the tippy top of these glacier-covered mountains. So you could be disabled in a wheelchair and go to the top of these mountains and see these views.
Yeah.
It's a little more rewarding if you're capable of hiking it, and then you get to the top and you're like, yes, this is amazing. If you're a hiker, you know what I mean. It's more rewarding when you've worked for it.
And I will say, probably 90% of the views you could see without hiking anywhere, but that 10%, the extra 10% was really awesome. Some of the hikes we did, the views were amazing.
Yeah, so highly recommend Switzerland. Okay, so let's talk about what happened after Switzerland, because it's been a little bit hectic since then.
Yeah, I don't know if it's just Europe. We've had a lot of issues since COVID flying, and I don't know why.
COVID started, like since 2020, our experience flying, not like since us having COVID, but like since COVID started in 2020.
Since the COVID era, I guess.
Everything after that has been just nuts.
Yeah, we've had more issues in the last probably 2 years than we have ever, all combined in the past. And it's funny because our first trip we took was 5 months, like first long trip out of the country, and we had almost no issues the entire time. Flights were on time, buses were mostly on time. We had, some like maybe 30 minutes here, 30 minutes there, an hour, but everything works out okay. But this trip has been crazy. And we also had another trip just before this where we went to Colorado in May, and we got stuck overnight in Dallas flying back from Colorado based on, I think it was like an issue with the plane, I can't remember, or it was weather. And this time, we've just had so many issues since we left Switzerland. Like, it's funny, we got to Switzerland, everything was great, we had that pass, we took trains and buses from one place to the next. Our flight there was fine. I don't think there was any issues.
There
on
was
our
a
flight
delay,
there.
but we
Was
had
there?
a long. Yeah, we had a delay then too.
Okay.
But we had
so
a
pretty
long,
much every flight we've had issues.
layover, so we were okay. But we were close to missing it.
Okay.
So we did a poll on our Instagram, and a lot of people answered. I don't remember the number. Probably more than 100 people answered, and 85% of them said that they feel like travel, especially flights, have been worse since after COVID. And Jared was just recently listening to, wasn't it on the Joe Rogan podcast, where they were saying like it's a thing. Like the airlines are having so much more problems. Like I don't know if you guys remember the Southwest crap that happened earlier this year.
That was at Christmas time.
Craziness, and just like a lot of it they're attributing to staffing because they laid off all these people during COVID, so then you don't have as many employees when this boom of travel comes back, so now you're hiring new employees and they're all new and they don't know what they're doing. Just a lot of issues. I don't know if staffing is all of it, but we've had so many problems. Never in the past did we ever have a delay where we had to stay overnight. This year we've had
three in just like 3 months.
And 2 were in the last week. It's insanity. Everything is delayed. There's always a problem. You can't get through. There's lots of issues.
You're saying our flight here was delayed like to Switzerland.
Yep.
That means that every single first flight we've had on this entire trip, which I think is like 5, like starting a day, the first flight of the day, every single one has been delayed. And every single connection has been on time, which has caused way more issues. Like if it was a delay, okay, you get there late, but it's not a big deal. But we've had our first flights delayed every time on this trip, and the connections have always been on time. So we've had a lot of issues.
And it makes sense if it's weather, but a lot of times there's just no reason. They just make some crap up, and it's like there's no reason. That we don't know what's going on. Is it the air traffic control? Is it the baggage people? Is it the staff? Is it the pilot? Like so many problems. Oh, and we've also known and had so many other people this past year that like lost their luggage too.
What happened to me at Christmas?
Yeah, and so we almost never check our bags, and we've been doing this for 5 years that we've been traveling internationally. Almost never check our bags unless we absolutely have to because it was like overweight or it was a budget airline where they have certain rules. Sometimes like the flight back home, we have to take a small plane because we live where we live is just a regional airport, so usually we connect at a bigger airport and then we take a small plane, and sometimes our bags don't fit in the overhead bin, so they'll be like, oh yeah, we'll just check it for you for free and you'll get it back. Well, he didn't get his back on our way back from New Zealand. So anyway, there's just been so many issues, so let's tell you what happened.
Yeah, so let us know in the comments if you've had travel issues. We won't go into depth. I mean, it has been a nightmare, so we won't go real in depth, but we'll just cover it real quick. So when we left Switzerland, the plan was to go from Zurich to Ljubljana, Slovenia, and we had a connection in Serbia. And we had plenty of time. It was like a 2.5 hour layover. We were like, okay, it'll be perfect. I think there wasn't a lounge, but anyway, we thought it was going to be fine. There was going to be no issue. Well, our flight from Zurich, the first flight, was delayed like 2.5 hours. And there was no more flights out that night. So our options were either to stay in Switzerland and just completely book new flights, or we could go to Serbia knowing that we would probably get stuck in the airport there.
And this was nerve-wracking because Serbia, even when we booked the flights, I was like, we connect in Serbia, and I don't really know if Serbia is safe. It's not really somewhere I've like researched before, so I did like a quick Google, and it was like, Serbia is safe enough, it's fine. But it like wasn't really a place we would want to go, but I was like, you know what, it's just a connection.
Yeah.
But now we're faced with the situation where before we even leave, we know pretty much we're going to miss our connection, and we're probably going to be stuck in Serbia. But again, quick Google, it was like, it's probably safe. And we're like, you know what, they'll probably just put us up overnight in an airport hotel, like it'll be all right.
Yeah, so we got there, and that's pretty much what happened, except that it was in the worst possible way. We got there, we knew we'd already missed the flight. We tried to find where to go to rebook the flight. That was a disaster. We had to go through immigration. There was long lines. We finally got to where we needed to rebook the flight. There's no more flights tomorrow or the next day to Ljubljana. Directly. So they had to put us on a different airline in the morning. We had to be there at 4 a.m. or something for a 6 a.m. flight. And we had to connect in Frankfurt, Germany. So we just came from Switzerland, and we're connecting in Serbia to go to Slovenia. And now we have to go back north to Germany to connect to go to Ljubljana. And we were like, okay, whatever, there's no other options. They were like, this is the only option. So we did it. What we didn't realize at the time is that the guy...
back up before that. So apparently the reason that our flight was delayed from Zurich is Air Serbia right now is a disaster.
It's a disaster.
Apparently they're having a lot of problems at the hub, the main hub in Serbia. And we found this out while we were in the airport for hours with hundreds of other people trying to get out of Serbia. All of these people were stuck in Serbia, and turns out like we had looked at the flight the day before, just seeing like we were looking at all the flights that went through Serbia to go somewhere else, and the day before all the flights were delayed too, so they're just having all these problems. So our plane got there late to Zurich to pick us up to take us to Serbia, so they're having all these problems. So we just and also Serbian people, like people in like the Eastern European and Slavic countries, like former USSR countries, their personalities just aren't the same. Like they have very flat affects in general, not everybody, but
mostly
the personalities are just not the same, and the customer service is not the same. And so basically we sat in this airport for 4 hours with
it was more than that. We got there at 7.
People.
We didn't leave till after midnight.
Yeah, it was like 5 hours. So we sat there in the airport with hundreds of other people with no one answering questions. Like you would just be face to face with an employee and they just wouldn't answer your question. They would just stare at you or look down at their paper and just not answer your question. So
we waited in line like with all these other people. No one knows what's going on. The employees, they just keep saying the buses are coming. So we were supposed to, like, it sounded great. It was like, okay, just go fix your flight and then go here. We'll give you a hotel voucher. And we're like, okay, great.
And we'll take you to the hotel.
Yeah, we'll go to the hotel and everything will be fine. So we got our flight changed. We go to the hotel voucher line, and the line just doesn't move for like 3 or 4 hours. And if you go up and ask them, they're just like, oh, well, the bus is coming, and well, we need to get everyone's passports, and like just all these, like, they're just basically trying to pass the buck or like make you
think that they're doing something when they're not really doing anything. So we end up learning there's a guy in line with us who is from Montenegro, and he doesn't speak the exact same language as they do in Serbia, but he like knows enough to like be able to tell us some things. And so he like starts trying to get the inside scoop, and so he learns that they're having all these problems at the airport, that the staff is on strike, that they've quit, that's why they're short-staffed, and all these
that the
problems.
whole country is going through protests right now. We didn't know any of that.
So we're just feeling real nervous being in Serbia. So then the reason the buses were delayed, the really and genuinely, like, they were sending shuttle buses to pick all of us up and bring us to a hotel. They were going to pay for it and everything, and then bring us back to the airport. The buses are stuck in traffic because there were protests blocking the highway. Yeah. So then that made us feel really nervous. Like, we don't really want to be in Serbia in the first place. Now we're going to go out here into the world, out of the airport, and be stuck in traffic with protests. It could be dangerous. So we almost just stayed in the airport and just slept on a bench.
That we did talk to were like, I don't know if I would go. We had trouble getting to the airport today. You might not be able to get here in the morning. Just all these crazy things. We didn't know what to do. We ended up going, and we left the airport at like 12:30, and then they said that the shuttle bus was coming to pick us up from the hotel at 3, mm-hmm. right? So we got to the hotel at 12:30, and we had to be back on the bus at 3, and it was like.
So we slept napped a little bit for like 2 hours, and it was actually a really nice hotel. And they were also supposed to give us food. So apparently in Europe they have this passenger bill of rights, where the airline has to cover a hotel, transportation, and food for you if you get stuck overnight. And if you get stuck for a certain number of hours, but not overnight, they're supposed to still give you food. So they were supposed to give us dinner and a hotel and the shuttle. They covered the shuttle and the hotel for 2 hours. But the restaurant was closed already when we got there, so we didn't get food. But we raided the mini bar, and we were like, we don't have to pay for this because our credit card isn't on file. Air Serbia has to pay for this. So anyway, we go back to the airport at 3 a.m. and we're like, you know what? Just get us out of Serbia.
Yeah. We were like, okay, this was an adventure. It'll be fun to look back on. We'll go to Frankfurt. We'll be out of Serbia and everything will be fine. Whatever protests or whatever going on, we'll be out of here. But that was not the end of it. We get to Frankfurt. What we didn't realize when the guy booked the flight, he said it was our only option, is that he only gave us a 45-minute connection in Frankfurt. And as you would expect, the flight out of Serbia was delayed, and we only had 45 minutes anyway. So we run through the airport, we have to go back through security, we have to go through immigration, we have to do all this stuff.
We even tried to skip the line. We begged and pleaded with the guards and stuff, and the people in line, like, can we please go ahead? We only have 30 minutes, so we even skipped all the lines.
And we still didn't make it. We weren't even close. It would have been 20, 30 more minutes before we would have actually gotten to our gate. So
yeah, because a lot of times in these airports, if you're coming from one country to another, like you have to go back through security, even though it's just a connection, because it's a different country, especially if it's not an EU country, which Serbia is not. So it was a disaster.
It was a disaster. And then the next flight was not for 11 hours. So they were in Frankfurt for 11 hours. And okay, so eventually we get there, and it was, we got there, what, midnight?
26 hours later than we were supposed to get there.
Yeah, so it was crazy. That was, we thought, this is the worst travel experience.
This is the craziest thing that's ever happened. I can't believe this happened to us. We missed a whole first night of our stay in Slovenia. We're supposed to be in Slovenia 5 nights. We missed the first night of our hotel. Luckily, we used points, so we weren't really like out money necessarily, but it was still a huge bummer. So then we only ended up having 3 full days in Slovenia, and then we're also really tired because we didn't sleep the night before. So then we sleep a lot, like the first day. So it really cut down on our time in Slovenia, which was a bummer.
Yeah, so definitely not ideal. And we're like, okay, well, at least all that's over. The flight delay and staying in Serbia and 11 hours in the airport, and we're done with all that. So then we are in Slovenia. We're in Ljubljana for basically 3.5 days, and Ljubljana was wonderful. We really liked it there. Okay, so
we'll give Slovenia like 30 seconds. It was a really nice country. We enjoyed the capital, Ljubljana, and we did a day trip to Lake Bled, which if you haven't heard of Lake Bled, it's a gorgeous lake. It was beautiful. It looked like a postcard. We have more pictures to share from there. They have this little island in the middle of the lake, and they built a church on the island. And so then you go up to this like viewpoint. I have a really cool picture of it. There's an island with a church in the middle, and then there's a castle, and it's like this gorgeous lake. It was just stunning. It looked like a fairy tale.
It was beautiful. I would definitely recommend Slovenia. People were very nice. Everything there was great.
Low cost of living, so we were eating out and living it up in Slovenia in our like 2.5 days. So we really enjoyed it there, and they said that one of their favorite hobbies there is hiking. So like we would love to go back and spend more time in that country.
Yep.
We enjoyed it very much.
So then we're leaving there, and we're supposed to fly to Latvia. And we get to the airport, the flight's delayed, we had a pretty short connection, we missed the flight again. And this time we connected in Paris. And so we're stuck in the Paris airport. And we go ask them, like, okay, we have to change our flight now. This connection didn't work out, our flight was delayed, all that. So they change it, and it's the next morning, I think like 8 a.m.
So not once but twice, we get stuck overnight in somewhere that we're not supposed to be overnight. And it's like, oh yeah, you get to go to Paris overnight. No, you don't. You just go to the airport hotel. Like, you don't actually go to Paris for the night. And then also we were a little bit worried about being in Paris because they've been
also
having
protests.
All these crazy, like riot level protests, like setting cars on fire. I don't know if you guys have heard about that. So I was like, I don't want to be anywhere near Paris. Yeah, I'll go to the airport hotel like 1 mile away. But I'm like, how has this really happened to us? In the same week, get stuck overnight, 2 places that we didn't plan to be.
And what's so crazy about this, I was kind of laughing about this. So we got stuck in Serbia and also Paris, both having protests at the time. And you would think like, oh, well, you were stupid for doing that. Well, here's the thing. The flights that actually left from Serbia and Paris were on time. It was our flights there that were delayed that caused us to miss the flights that were on time. So the issues weren't even with the actual countries, which, it's just
I think the Serbia
ironic.
One was because it was Air Serbia, and I do think that, like, they were just having delays all day long because Air Serbia sucks and they're having problems.
Yeah.
So, indirectly, it was Serbia's fault. But, so then we get stuck in Paris. And
so Paris, it's better than being in Serbia, and the airport hotel was not great, but it was fine.
And it was a much easier process.
Much easier.
Well, the airport's huge, and it was a disaster trying to figure out, like, which desk to go to. Like, usually when you get off a plane in America, there's, like, a desk there and a person you can talk to. Like, you don't have to walk that far. It's, like, you maybe have to walk over, like, 1 or 2 gates, and there's, like, a help desk. We had to run on miles all through this Paris airport trying to find a desk and someone that would help us. And then also Parisian people, French people, are not very nice either.
Yeah, not very friendly.
They're not very friendly, and they don't like to speak English to you, and so not very helpful. But I will say their process was a lot better than Serbia.
It took us about 2 hours compared to 5 hours, so it was better.
So they were just like, boom, voucher, airport, shuttle, dinner, breakfast, here you go, printed us a little slip, told us where to go, and it was actually pretty smooth.
So we had to be back on the airport shuttle at 7 to be back at the Paris airport. We're like, okay, not a big deal. We're going to get on this.
We actually got a full night's rest, so that was good.
Yeah, we're going to get on this like 9:30 flight, and we'll get there by 1, and we will only have missed like 12 hours, not a big deal. So we get back to the airport the next day. We get on the plane. The plane's on time. I'm like, wow, it's our first flight on time.
We jinxed the hell out of it. We were just like, wow, the plane's actually going to... They boarded 45 minutes early. Like,
it wasn't 45 minminutes, but they boarded early for sure.
They boarded early. We're on the plane. We're on the runway.
It's a direct flight. We're going straight from here now to where are we at right now? We're in Latvia. Riga, yeah. So direct flight there. It's going to be great. We get on the plane. We get out to the runway, and we stop there for a while. And then the pilot says, we're stuck here, I'll update you in a second. And then he says, apparently we have a flat tire, we have to return to the gate. So we're like,
at this point, I don't know, this is a bad joke, but I don't know if you guys heard about recently, there were 2 planes that basically crash landed on the runway. I don't remember where they were, but they basically like nosedived and their landing gear wasn't working. And I was like, you know what, at this point, just leave with the flat tire. We'll just nosedive it when we get there. Those people survive.
Yeah. So we go back to the gate. We're like, okay, there's a flat tire. Maybe this will delay us a couple hours. It delayed us 11 hours.
Well, and I don't know how flat tires work on planes, but I'm like, can we just stay on the plane? Can't they just like jack it up while we're on here? You know, like NASCAR this like tire on and put us back on the runway. But then they said, we're going to deplane and send you back to the gate. And I was like, this is a bad sign. They're getting us
So
off
we went
the
from
plane.
like a 9:30 departure to a 8-something departure. And so we're just stuck in the airport for all this time.
We literally did a workout in the airport. I was like, I cannot be in this airport any longer. And they didn't like have a gate for us. So we didn't want to leave where they like left us, because it wasn't on the board anymore. And even if you like go to Google Flights and
it said we already departed.
It said we already
departed.
departed.
On the runway, so
we like didn't want to leave the area where they had us sitting in this like waiting area at all, because we were just like, I was just watching the person who was responsible for us the whole time like a hawk to make sure they didn't leave, because that was the only person we could go to for information. So we're just sitting here in this waiting area for like 10 hours. So I started doing like lunges and like calf raises and all this stuff.
Wrote articles.
So we just live at the Paris airport at this point.
Yeah. It's really ironic, because that was twice in a week that we not only had to stay overnight in a city we weren't supposed to be in, but then also got stuck for 11 hours at the airport the next day.
And arrived at our destination 26 hours late. And it's crazy because, so we're using, we used almost all Airbnbs in Switzerland, but then we had some hotel nights that we could use. And we actually happened to have some Marriott points. And so Marriott, as well as a couple of other brands, do this thing where if you book 4 nights, you get the 5th night free. So we were like, oh, this will be cool. We'll just do that in the capitals of these countries that are smaller, where we're mostly just going to do like what's around the capital. So in Slovenia, we did our 5 nights at a Marriott with the 5th night free. And then we did the same thing here in Riga in Latvia, 5 nights, the 5th night free. Both situations were 26 hours late and like missed our free night.
Yeah.
So we basically ended up getting 4 nights. So at least it was a free night, but like it was just still a bummer, because then it cut down our already short time in each of these countries to be even shorter.
Yeah. Not only did we miss a night, but then both situations we got there after midnight on the second night. So yeah, I have no idea.
We almost got here too late to check in.
Yeah.
Like the reception closes at like 1, and if we'd gotten here after 1 a.m.
We got here at 12:45.
Then they were like, well, the security guard will just have to let you into your room. So
traveling right now, although it's great, we love to travel, it's been extremely hectic. And we, at this point, are going to do everything we possibly can to avoid flights, because I don't know if it's just our luck, I don't know if it's just all flights right now, but this has been a nightmare. I mean, all of our other trips, we've traveled internationally for a combined total of like 16, 17 months now. We've never had issues like this. And to have 2 back-to-back flights that were just nightmares like that is, it's making us reconsider flying.
So I think some of it's coincidence, bad timing, whatever, bad luck. But I think part of it is it's one of the busiest travel summers in Europe. It was also during the 4th of July week, which I kept hearing on like the US news channels, like this is going to be such a busy travel week. So, you know, they expect the airports are going to be crazy. But I was like, we're in Europe and we're not flying anything to do with the US. So I didn't think that would impact us, but who knows? I mean, you know, then there's all these American flights coming into Europe and going to America. So who knows? Maybe that did impact it. But it's been a nightmare. So up until this point, when we left for the honeymoon, we had the 2.5 weeks in Switzerland booked. We had Slovenia, Latvia and Estonia, which is our next place booked. But after that, we had nothing else booked. So like Jared said, we're going to do everything we can for the next 7 weeks to not fly.
If it we're even talking about taking a 12-hour ferry to avoid going to airports now, because we're just scarred from airports. A 12-hour ferry is nothing compared to 32 hours between airports and flights. And
yeah, because a lot of times at the airports, it's well, okay, say it's a 2-hour flight or a 3-hour flight or a 4-hour flight. Well, then you still have to go early and you still have to get there. Sometimes the airports are kind of outside of the city. So now you're taking a taxi or a bus for 30 minutes or an hour. You're there 2 hours early. You have your flight. You might have a layover. You're spending 12 hours basically flying anyway. So yeah, we have a bus from here where we are in Latvia to Estonia next, a 4-hour bus. And then from there, we're taking a 2-hour ferry from Estonia to Helsinki, Finland. And the next thing that we're looking to do is take a 12-hour ferry from Finland to Sweden.
Yeah.
And then from there, everything is connected. So Sweden, Norway, and Denmark, you can access by car, train, or bus without flying. So we're going to do some form of transportation all through those, but we haven't planned it yet.
So probably our only other flight on this trip, because of the issues we've had, will be our flight home.
Yeah.
I don't think we'll do any more flights.
Yep. So it's been interesting.
Yeah, it's been interesting. I said we were going to do an abbreviated version. We basically did the full version. So
yeah.
So that's all the issues we had. From now on, though, we're hoping that things go more smoothly. Switzerland was amazing. This middle part has kind of been, the countries are great, but that really kind of put a sour taste in our mouth. But we're hoping everything from here on out goes great. And so when we leave here, we go to Estonia, Finland, Sweden, Norway, Denmark. So
yeah, and we're especially excited about those Nordic countries. We kind of just tacked these other ones on in there because they're kind of in between. We were oh, this would be a cool way to get up there. We've never been to Latvia, Estonia, Slovenia before. So these have been fun and they've been fine. We did the capitals and then just did kind of a day trip. So today we did a day trip to a place that had a castle and a river and beautiful churches and a nice hike through the forest. So we've done some fun stuff, but we're definitely really excited, especially about Norway and Sweden.
Yeah, I will say that Eastern Europe, they don't like you to call it Eastern Europe for whatever reason. I guess that has a negative connotation. But east of Germany is very underrated. I feel like a lot of people either act like it's not safe or they don't want to go there. But some of my favorite countries in Europe have been east of Germany. So I think definitely underrated countries. Latvia, I think Estonia is going to be amazing. We really like Slovenia. Poland was really cool. The Czech Republic is one of my favorite countries. Croatia obviously is amazing. So some really great countries in Eastern Europe, and I would definitely recommend checking them out.
Yeah, the ones that we're in right now, they also refer to themselves as the Baltic countries, which I didn't really know that designation. It's interesting to try to name the different regions, but yeah, I guess Estonia, Latvia, and then we're not going to Lithuania, but those three kind of together, they call the Baltics. So we're exploring the Baltics right now, and then next we will go to the Nordic and or Scandinavian countries, which we're really excited about. So stay tuned. If you haven't been, definitely follow along on Instagram. That's where we post the majority of our pictures. I update the story every day with kind of what we did that day, but we'll post some on the feed every now and then on Instagram and Facebook as well.
Yep, and stay tuned for Whitney's Switzerland article, and then we probably won't do another article about expenses and about what we did until the end of the trip. So, but yeah, stay tuned for those.
Yeah, and then hopefully soon we'll be able to do another travel therapy content video. It's been a little bit weird, like Jared said, we had 6 weeks where we didn't do a video because we were so busy with the wedding and getting started with the trip. We thought when we were in Slovenia that we were going to have time to catch up on some work and stuff, but obviously our time got significantly diminished by that delay, and same thing here in Latvia, so we haven't had as much time to get caught up on articles and videos and stuff as we thought. But stay tuned, we'll have some new content coming out for you guys soon. We're definitely past due for a job market update. We need to do that soon.
We really need to do that. We really haven't had a direct eye on the market for a little while, so it'd be good to check in with the companies and see what's going on, what trends they're seeing. Seems like things are still pretty good, but I'm really not sure.
Yeah, so stay tuned. Definitely continue to follow along with our trip. If that's something that interests you, reach out with any questions, whether it's about traveling for fun internationally or whether it's about travel therapy. Feel free to reach out.
Yep. Thanks for watching, everyone. We'll see you next time.
All right. Bye.
Bye.